So, as he said, voluntary nutrient management plans, this regulation went into effect a couple of years ago with the Senate Bill 150, some of the wording that was in there. And Glenn's 100% right. They're not going away. We're going to see these nutrient management plans because there's a need out there for that public opinion on farmers just potentially throwing nutrients into the waterways. I mean, we see the reports. You see some of it on social media that farmers are just dumping chemicals, toxins, fertilizers, manure straight into the ditch. And so we need nutrient management plans as the most fundamental thing to protect our farmers and agriculture, to say we are doing the right rates, we are doing the right sources, we're accounting for all our nutrients out there around the farm. And so at the most basic level, nutrient management plans will provide us some validity to these accounts that we're just throwing nutrients out there. So like I said, the biggest thing with nutrient management plans at the most basic level, we need to get soil tests. We need to have good soil tests, and they need to be recent. We'll get into some of this in a second, but we need to address the 4 R's: source, rate, time, place. We're going to continuously hear that for the next couple of years. And then nutrient management plans will also reduce risk. It goes along with the rates and the soil tests. Are we putting out what is agronomically responsible and what is environmentally responsible? And then can that equal accountability for the farmers? So as I said, Senate Bill 150 established a lot of this. That goes back to 2014. That also established the fertilizer certification, the voluntary nutrient management plans, record keeping for the fertilizer certification. All that came about because of fertilizer certification, or Senate Bill 150. Along with that came affirmative defense. We'll get into that a little bit later. So what is a nutrient management plan? So by law, there are several versions of it. I put this up there mainly because I have a lot of regulation on here, and it's a lot of words, but you have a lot of nutrient management plans, but people don't know what they are. So by law, we have 3. I kind of thought this was a little funny because most of the time nutrients, we're thinking of like 4-letter words, and if you put that for nutrient management plan, there's a lot more out there, a lot of better comics on it, but I figured I'd better not put those up here. So there are 3 versions, like I said. The first one is an Ohio nutrient workbook, and that was something Extension created back there at the time of Grand Lake St. Mary's, and this is a 1-year plan. It's a workbook you can work through. They have a spreadsheet, and you can do a 1-year nutrient management plan. That is the first acceptable nutrient management plan. Documents all the things that you need. The farmer can do it pretty easily with their basic soil tests. The second is a CNMP. CNMPs can be written by technical service providers, CCAs, and other soil and waters NRCS. They can write nutrient management plans. This will take into account manure nutrients. We'd want to see these on farms where they're creating manure there on the facility. They're much more in-depth plan. That's much more sophisticated. I've wrote 40 plus of these, and I mean, longest one was probably 250 pages. Shortest one was probably 40. They're much longer document. 3 to 5 years, we're looking at that as our planning period, and we're going to take into account all those nutrients, crop rotation, all those things in a nutrient management plan. There is a large learning curve for this. A lot of times, agronomists don't have time to learn how to write a CNMP, so they say, we won't even worry about it. We'll let soil, water, or TSPs do the CNMPs. So we do have a large learning curve with the CNMP and the MMP program that goes along with it. So the final version is what was named in Senate Bill 150, and that was a form approved by the director or the director's designee that contains the following. So when we were assigned this task to figure out what a nutrient management plan was, we said, okay, what are our ag retailers doing? What's available? What can prevent us from being redundant with our work? So we had several programs, cost sharing for nutrient or soil testing in the Western Lake Erie Basin. So we went out there to the ag retailers and said, what can you provide us already? So we had this in our mind that they can provide a soil test, they can give us a georeference map, they can give us a prescription. We need to go take that and say, okay, let's verify what they're saying they're doing and document it. Let's fill in the gaps where there might be missing something, and we'll call that a nutrient management plan. So that's where we started off when we started down this road of nutrient management plans. So in 2000, that rule came into effect 2014. We started working on it in about 2016. We got this plan approved. And so this plan more or less says that we have to follow 590 guidance and that we must follow for soil testing, and we need soil tests no older than 3 years old. We must document method, source, seasonal time of all nutrients. We have to account for manure, commercial fertilizer, biosolids, etc. And then we need location, acres, yields, and so on. So we had the guidelines of what were needed. We need to fill in the blanks. We knew what an ag retailer can provide us. We're going to take this and fill in the blanks. So on the other end of it, to meet everything for affirmative defense and so on, we also need to make sure we're record keeping. So we had that in the back of our mind of, hey, if we're making a spreadsheet, we might as well have a record keeping sheet along with it, because that's going to be the most important thing. Just as they said a second ago, records are going to be integral to your defense. If you ever get a complaint, you need to know how much, where, and so on. So as part of Senate Bill 150, they approved 11 things that needed to be in record keeping. Since then, they updated it, and now there's 13 things that need to be updated, along with the, is it frozen, what was the forecast, and so on. So we have that list of those 13 things that are needed on record keeping. So we have all that information. We went to work on a nutrient management plan, and we kind of came up with a spreadsheet. So what are the things that are in the spreadsheet? Well, or what does it provide? A nutrient management plan can provide us affirmative defense. I don't know where everything's going to play out with the Lake Erie Bill of Rights, but this is something that may come up, is do you have a nutrient management plan? Is that going to provide you any protections? I have no idea. I'm not going to speculate, but something that may be on our minds right now. Next thing is having the soil waters have this available, or having it yourself to review your retailer's recs. When we started down this road, we saw that there was several retailers that were over-prescribing compared to Tri-State. So this gave them a little tool to look at Tri-State recommendations versus their ag retailers' recommendations. And we did see some discrepancies, but we also seen some ag retailers that were doing a very good job of following the 4 Rs. So, and then the final thing is this meets the needs of the soil and waters to write a nutrient management plan. So our soil and waters have this available to them. They can write nutrient management plans. Currently, it does not meet 590. So if a producer is out there with a NRCS contract, this plan would not meet 590, just to make that sure that everyone's aware about that. So I'm going to kind of sit down over here and kind of go through the spreadsheet and show everyone what it is, how we use it, and more or less the ins and outs of it. So I don't know how well we can see that, but this is just a soil test from one of our ag retailers. Find the mouse here. And so we have, oh, I guess I'm not out of. Yeah, I'll just throw this over here. Oh, it's not projecting up there. Any idea on how we need to get that up there? There we go. Okay. So this is a spreadsheet. I'm going to have to turn around to kind of get my bearings, but the intent is to document name, fields, tracts, wherever they are, and acres. And then we're going to come down here and punch in a couple of soil tests. So the soil test I had up there, let me see if I can drag this over here. So we're going to look at soil tests 13, 15, and 26 and kind of compare the numbers that our ag retailer has on their soil tests versus what we have out, what we would get when we put them into the spreadsheet. So our CEC is 10.2. Oh. Doesn't like this, huh? Numlock's not on or something. Our phosphorus level is 57. It is pounds per acre. There's a checkbox up here if it's in pounds per acre versus parts per million. And there is also a Bray to Mehlich 3 conversion that's ran in the background. And then we punch our K in, and it's 175. And so we can then put our crop in our average yield, and it's going to give us our recommendations. Up here are our tri-state recommendations. We'll go ahead and put another one in just for comparison. So I'll do 15 here. And so we're at a 15.4 CEC. Our P level is 87. And our K is 323. And so we're going to see that it is going to give us a rate. So down here we have a list of common products that we see from ag retailers here in Ohio. So let's select MAP and potash. And then we go ahead and select MAP and potash again for our second year crop. And that's going to give us the rates of potash and MAP based on our recommendation. So if we know MAP is about 50% product, so it doubles that 67 to 128, doubles that 48 to approximately 92. It's going to do the same thing for the analysis over here on potash. And so we can see our recommendation zeroes out over here. We have our tri-state recommendation of 57, or 67 and 48, and they correspond down the table. And so when we look at an ag retailer's map, we have our soil test of 13 right here in the middle. And so we can see that that soil test corresponds to this 57. It's blue. Then I can come down here to my legend, and I see that it's very hard for everyone to see, but they're going to have 35-pound increments that VRT spreader can spread across the field. So we can their rate starts at 35 here and goes up in 35-pound increments. And so I can see that they're at 187 plus 35 pounds equals 225-pound recommendation. And we could, if we go back to our spreadsheet, it's at 92 plus the 128 here for MAP equals a 220-pound recommendation. I would say that's well within what we're going to call adequate for a recommendation. We're within 2 pounds of a 50% product. So that shows me that they are following tri-state. So what may happen is, hey, we have 30 pounds of starter. We can take account of that. So, hey, let's put 30 pounds of starter out there. Well, that nutrient or that recommendation will take account for that and take that rate down the 30 pounds that we would have in the product. So it's going to account for all those things, and we would be able to document that. So additionally, we're going to have additional questions down here where we're going to document things that may not be in a ag retailer's plan. But we can see a lot of things on these ag retailers' plan that we do need. We can see that they're having 180 bushel corn, 60 bushel beans, and we can take account for that. We know how many acres they're spreading on. The field is 73 acres. We can see that they're applying to only 50 acres of it. We have a total tonnage per field out there. There's a lot of things that that the ag retailers can already provide us that saves us a lot of work. And that's one of the things that if we're looking at 4 million acres across the watershed, we really need to save work for ourselves and make it easier on Soil and Waters and ODA, who will be looking at these for verification process. So on top of that, we also created we put the record keeping sheet. So on the front sheet, we have this verification form where we're verifying rates. Down here, we have places where we can account for everything else. And then we have some additional record keeping stuff that prints out on the back of the sheet. We additionally have some buttons to make things easier. We can save it as a PDF. We can create a new field. We can print right here where it tells us to print. We can also clear form. The clear form, and we'll just start over new once we want to look at it. To address other needs of the Soil and Waters, we also created a second part of it, and that's a nutrient management plan that would allow us to look at 10 different fields, accounting for average soil tests. So we put together a summary to summarize these handful of sheets, and then we have a field. Looks very similar to the previous sheet, but we put in average soil tests on these. And so we have a lot of the information on top, and then we put in our soil test just the same as before. We pick our crops, we pick our yield goals. It gives us a recommendation. We have a little balance right here, and then we plan the crop down here. We have the target, we pick the target crops, we pick the sources, we pick the rates, and we go from there. On top of that, we added a custom fertilizer. So we were able to account for limited nutrients outside of our traditional nutrients we have here in a list. So we could potentially do some chicken litter or something like that. And if we know the analysis, there's some notes there. If we had an analysis of 10, 10, 10, we can put that in, and then that will calculate up here to chicken litter. So we can now pick that as a product to put there in the nutrient management plan. We do have to select the units, so we'd say pounds per ton. So we can account for some of that out there. It is pretty limited. It does not make some of the same assumptions that, like availability of N, that 50% in the first year and 25%. At this point right now, it doesn't make that assumption, but that is something that we are aware of. So if we do see these, we may look at those numbers and evaluate them as needed. Just like the other sheet, we then can scroll down more, has that same record keeping sheet on it. So for the most part, everything's here in this spreadsheet. Kind of as the title said, it is in draft form, but it's been around for 2 years, but it has not been widely used. We've had limited uses by the Soil and Waters. We've had limited uses by several co-ops. Soil and Waters, for the most part, use it on a lot of grant work where they said that they would write nutrient management plans for grants. So it has seen some use in that perspective. We did put an inventory sheet, and this is more or less so we can document all the other things that they're doing on the farm there. And so we have a handful of, or a record sheet that's here, and hopefully we can answer all of our nutrient questions here on this sheet, and everything is contained in one spreadsheet. So it is available, it is out there. If you want a copy, feel free to email me, but that is about it for that standpoint of the spreadsheet. We tried to make it as useful as possible, but we're pretty limited when we use Excel to do this. It'd be great if we could have this all online and have it in a nice online format where we can save our records, but we currently didn't have the capacity to do it, so this is what we ended up with. But it was our first attempt at it. I don't know where this will lead us in the future, but it is something that is out there available, and this is currently ODA's form of a nutrient management plan. Oh, that's not mine. I'm trying to get my contact information up here. If you are interested in the spreadsheet, there's my contact information. Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Kip.
Yeah.
When you have I think you covered it, but when you have a manure test, you enter pounds per ton, or
Yeah, so there's three things.
it automatically converts to fertilizer now.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
There's pounds per ton, gallons, and pounds. And the only assumption with the gallons is we're assuming a density of 11, because we have varying densities of liquid products. So that is one assumption we make on it. It's 11 pounds for all liquid products.
Okay, thanks.
Tyler. One question, Tyler. Only one.
So if we do get to a distress situation, is this going to be used for that?
I will not speculate. Currently, we're reevaluating the distress rule, and so I guess we are not looking at it to use it in that situation. But yes, this is our nutrient management. Currently, this is our nutrient management plan. Currently, if we need to use it in a regulatory avenue, I'm sure that's the way we will go right now.
And is that?
I said one.
Well, I said and, so that's a continuation of the sentence. So you said it's not, doesn't work with 590 yet. Is there an effort to be made there? I mean, because hey, I work for Soil and Water, so I mean, we need ODA and NRCS to work together more than against one another.
So he asked, does it or will it currently meet 590 standards? So the limiting factor there is kind of Tri-State calls for nitrogen recommendations to be made through MRNT from Iowa State, I think is what it is. The economic threshold model. This does not account for the economic threshold model. We would have to take data from that point in time of when you sell corn and the price of nitrogen. Where we're at currently, we don't have the capability to put that in. We could, and we do have notes about it not meeting that standard, and we suggest that you review nitrogen rates. But right now, it doesn't meet because of probably that nitrogen threshold is probably the biggest limitation. We've had discussions with them. We haven't had any recently because we've just had more on our plate but the potential is there to meet it. We're meeting Tri-State. We just have to check all the check boxes that 590 is going to call for.
Because they're unwilling to change.
Any other questions? Yes.
Actually, I need to appreciate your assistance. It's very powerful. Do you have any intention to use the macros so that way you can automatically upload from your lab like the CN data as CSV from a grid standpoint to save?
Yes, I kind of worked on it for the last month or so. I kind of was working on something of that avenue so we could import data and export data into CSVs. We could tie a grid soil sample to it, and it would make the recommendation per Tri-State. I don't know if we will continue looking at that. It'll probably depend on the amount of nutrient management plans we need to get out there and the push by ag retailers to, I mean, that we're in a limited need right now on something like that, but I mean, there is potentially there. And you also could create your own. I mean, this uses tri-state to the T in the calculations. That's something that anyone with Excel could build to do the same. Yeah.
That's one of the most frustrating parts about all this going on. You just pointed out something, it's a limited need. The ag retailers are trying to do things to help out this situation. Unfortunately, the educators are supposed to educate the politicians. They're dropping the ball. We've had these nutrient management programs out. I've gone through for 5 years trying to write them. And every time you get one done, turn it in, it's changed.
So
They're never the same for a 6 or 7 month time.
So right now, this has not changed for 2 years. It's been the same. But yes, it could change. Tri-state could potentially change. Right now, we're using it on the 1995 numbers. If they make it official, we're going to have to update this. And yes, there is going to be change, and so we have to constantly update and keep changing. So yes, it is a concern, and we will have to address it by putting it on websites and keeping it constantly updated with revisions. Yes, it is. That is a limiting factor.
Let's give Kip a round of applause.